No, because that was always my intention. Like my intention in writing these books is social justice education, really. I mean, and anybody could read it and think it's a fun book. It's not boring like, you're reading something academic or something, but the whole purpose of it is I think people can learn things about our system that impacts all of us in a way that, like this person sitting on their couch in Omaha isn't probably going to pick up a book about women in prison, right? Like they're not going to, but they would pick up a book about a lawyer who's solving a mystery. And then while they're reading it, it's like, because I have so many people who are like, I had no idea. Like I learned so much about, what's going on with, I didn't know this was happening. And people don't. And that's somebody has to be a voice. For me, I feel like I want to be the voice for all these moms in prison and more importantly for their children.
Everybody, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter, the author podcast where I get to meet great authors from around the world. And it's amazing. I've had authors on this show that have done extraordinary things that I have never done and things that I would never know how to do. And today's another great example of this. Amanda's here with us today. And what she does and who she helps is amazing in this world. And it takes a lot of skill and knowledge and expertise to do what she does. And on top of that, to write as well as an author, I don't know how she has time to do all this, but she does, and she has time for us. So we're going to use as much of this time as we can today to get to know more about Amanda. So Amanda, welcome to Living the Next Chapter. So glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me. It's exciting.
All right. So let's tell everybody where you are currently, because it sounds like a really interesting place to be, and I'd love to see there and see what you're seeing, but tell everybody where you are right now.
You mean where I'm physically?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I have a cabin on an island called Decatur Island, which is in the San Juan Islands, which is in Washington State, about a couple hours north of Seattle, very close to the Canadian border. But I was talking to Dave a minute ago, and that close to being able to come over to Canada, which seems like a safe place to be right now. So in the San Juan Islands where I live, or where I live in the summer, there's the big San Juan Islands, which have public ferries, but then there are these little islands, which is one where I live, where there's no public ferry. So you either take a water taxi or a boat. And we have no stores, we have no medical, we have no police, we have no firefighters. It's not super far from where we leave the marina to, but it's very remote in terms of services.
So, like, how big are the islands that you're on?
Well, this island is maybe like 2 miles by 3 miles.
Okay.
And in the winter, there might be 50 people living here.
Wow.
4th of July, there was probably 200 or 300 people on the island. But it's pretty small.
How long have you had that place?
Almost 20 years, I think.
Oh, wow. Good. So it's a big part of your family's history, too, then.
Yeah, so as a vacation, we built it as a vacation getaway. And then during COVID, I told my husband, he's a doctor and he was doing doctoring stuff. And I'm like, I don't think this doctoring thing is a gynecologist. And I'm like, you shouldn't be like up in the business here with the COVID going around. And so I said, I think we should go up to the cabin for a couple of weeks until this coronavirus thing blows over. And we literally didn't come back to the mainland for was 18 months. So we came up here and we spent 18 months nonstop up here. And like we have stores, so you have to order your groceries in and they drop them off on the beach and it's a whole situation. Amazon comes in a couple times a day and drops off stuff and it was a mail shed. We could talk the whole time about this place.
I like this.
So we have it's like a little grass airstrip. And planes come in and Amazon, I don't know, DHL or somebody comes in once or twice a day. And there's this little mail shed. It's like a little shed that sits down next to the runway, the grass strip runway. And Amazon just dumps all these boxes into the mail shed. And so every day you have to go down and literally look at every box because it's not in any kind of organized fashion. And so when COVID happened, there were so many people that moved up here to get away from, the city, that they had to build a bigger mail shed because boxes were like coming out of the mail shed onto the, out in the rain and stuff. So anyway, it's a whole different lifestyle here. It's pretty fun and pretty mellow and relaxed. So it's a fun place to be.
Was this a place that you like to go to write? Did you ever write at the cabin?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
It's very peaceful. I mean, I'm looking out right now this beautiful meadow. I wish I could show it to you. There's a beautiful meadow out there. It's all bushes and stuff. And in May, it's about 15 acres and it's covered with pink wild roses.
Oh, nice.
And then right beyond that is the water. So it's really, really, really peaceful and pretty and very quiet.
There
Except
you
for,
go.
as I was telling you earlier, we're close to a naval air station. So sometimes they have maneuvers and it gets really noisy. But for the most part, it's lovely and quiet. So
There you
that's
go.
where I am now.
Excellent. So, Amanda, tell us a little bit about what you do as well. Kind of your main career that you do. I'm really interested in this, and then I want to kind of segue that knowledge of what you do and who you serve, and kind of let's talk about authorship. But tell everybody a little bit of your background and what you do.
So I basically went from the delivery room to the courtroom. I was a nurse a long time ago, and I decided to go back to law school and became a lawyer. And I was a medical malpractice lawyer for about 7 years, and then I switched to family law. So I started my own law firm, and I'm proud to say that this year is our 30th year. It's my 30th year of owning and operating and managing one of the first and longest standing women-owned law firms in Seattle.
Wow.
So I'm now a divorce lawyer and I have a firm of I think I have 11 lawyers, about 30 people work there now. And we have this really cool office right on Lake Union in Seattle, which is a kind of an urban lake where all the houseboats, Sleepless in Seattle was filmed right across the lake from where my office is.
Good.
And, but since COVID, we've all gone remote. So I work in the winter. I live in Todos Santos down in southern Baja. And in the summer, I live in the San Juan Islands. And intermittently, I go down to Seattle to make an appearance. And the lawyer that I work with, this is super fun. I had this new lawyer. I hired her last year, and she's like, I really want to work for you, but I'm going on a family trip. And I'm like, well, where are you going? Well, she lives in a school bus. Listen to this. She and her husband converted a school bus, and they and their three tweens, like 11, 13, and 15-year-old, and their five dogs live in a converted school bus, and they drive around to that Bureau of Land Management land, which is like public land in the U.S., and they just set up camp there, and she has a Starlink, and she's been working as a full-time lawyer from her converted school bus, driving around. She does court hearings from that school bus and everything. So it's me in Baja and Heather in a school bus someplace in Utah or someplace. Right now she's in the East Coast. And then my paralegal, she's a digital nomad now. So she house sits for people, and she might be in San Francisco one day, and she might be in Hawaii, and she might be in Denver. And then the rest of our team is pretty much Seattle located. But we have paralegals in Boise, Idaho, and Portland, but they all work out of our Seattle office. So it's a whole new.
Wow. Okay, so that's a lot of different legal background as well. You've done different things with your
Medical
practices.
malpractice.
Right, yeah, that's a lot of
Yep.
different avenues. Like, are you happy where you are today? And this is where you kind of see this is your main spot now?
Well, 30 years later, yes, pretty settled in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm a divorce lawyer, family law. I do, child custody and divorce and stuff like that. And then I've trained a bunch of the younger lawyers who are now, one of them is my partner, and she's, kind of a half owner, which is super exciting. And so, yeah, we do divorce and family law and domestic violence and things like that. But my first career, because I was a nurse,
Yeah.
I thought my logical place to go in the law would be into medical malpractice. But come to find out, when you do, which is my first book is about, when you work in medical malpractice, you end up having to deal with these insurance companies, which is a really heart-wrenching and blood-sucking way to make a living, dealing with insurance companies all the time. So I switched to family law, and lo and behold, as a nurse, the skills that you have as a nurse, like empathy and compassion and, working with people, and it's much better suited to family law because you're dealing with people instead of insurance companies. So
Yeah.
I settled into family law, and it's been a really good fit, and I love it. So
When we chatted before, you mentioned something along the lines of how patients are treated by a nurse compared to how people are treated as through law. And you're just saying there's a difference. It's kind of like who gets treatment and who gets what type of treatment based on who they are and all that information. Can you, that really sat with me, and I've been thinking about it a lot since we chatted. Can you kind of unpack that kind of dichotomy and struggle that you had to face in your different careers and different paths?
right. So I was a nurse. I was a labor and delivery nurse. And as everybody knows, or hopefully you know, that when you come into a hospital or a medical institution, it does not matter who you are.
Right.
The team's on it. They're going to take care of you. They're going to save your life. They're going to deliver your baby. They're going to, do whatever you need to do. And nobody, the doctors and the nurses have, honestly, we have no idea who these people are, where they're from, what their life is like. Like, we are just there to provide medical services, and every life is equally valuable. Fast forward to law school, And then I become a medical malpractice lawyer. And lo and behold, it turns out that everybody is not equal in the eyes of the law, and not the way that you think of it as, but it's like if you are in an accident or you die as a result of somebody else's negligence, the law has a way of valuing you as what your life is worth or what your injury is worth in a way that is not it's not what I was used to. It's not like everybody's valuable. It's like, oh, if the president of a bank gets in a car accident and gets a head injury, his family's going to get $5 million. But if a barista gets in a car accident and has a head injury, her family's going to get $50,000 because they value you in the legal system based on the amount of money you could earn
Okay.
and what your family or your estate is going to be missing out on. And so it took me a long time. I didn't like it, and that's when I wrote my first book. My first book is, and both of the first two books actually. The first book is called The Complication, and it's about an older man who dies, and he's a friend of the protagonist whose name is Camille Delaney. And she is trying to get a settlement for his wife because her husband has died. And the insurance company is saying what they always do is say, well, he doesn't have any value. He's retired. What's he worth? Why would we give her any money? Like she's not missing anything. And so it's sort of like I write books to teach people about social and legal issues. And that was when I first wrote that book was 20 years ago. And then I published it more recently. But that was what was on my mind at the time because I was so frustrated at how the legal system is so different than the medical system. It's not like somebody dies in the legal system and everybody cares about them. It's like, well, how can we prove that he didn't have any value? And that's
Yeah.
kind of how insurance companies work and how the legal system is set up.
So you mentioned that you wrote the book and then you released it later. What was the gap in that period of time? Like, did you have to go back and rewrite and work on it again?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. Yeah. So I wrote that book the first time because so I get into this world of medical malpractice and I'm going crazy because none of this makes any sense to me. And I wasn't one of those kids who came up, through college and poli-sci and history and wanting to go to law school. I was a nurse and then I just wanted to do a different career. So I didn't have that same sort of ingrained belief in the legal system like some people, you go straight through. So when I come in there, I feel like a stranger in a strange land. I'm like, what are you talking about? People are different values for their different jobs and things like that. And so that made me crazy. And so I thought I wanted to like talk about that. And I thought, oh, I'll write a magazine article. And I'm like, nobody's going to read a magazine article. I'll write a book about it. No, nobody's going to want a book. So I thought, I want to write a story about it. And the story is going to be this thriller, like an exciting mystery that we have to solve the mystery. But embedded in the mystery is all of the things that were making me crazy about the legal system. So it's sort of like an educational project to say, look, you might be reading this book because you want a fun mystery, but when you put that book down, you should be thinking, wow, I didn't know that that's how the legal system works. And I don't necessarily agree with that's how we should value human lives. So I wrote that when I was a trial lawyer. And then I got an agent and all that stuff, and it never really came to anything. And I just got busy and I put it on a shelf until COVID.
Okay.
So takes me back to my little cabin during
There you
COVID.
go.
Dark and stormy night up in the San Juan Islands. It's really stormy up here. It's really dark. The wind is whipping around sideways. And I'm like, what am I going to do here all winter? It's like really isolated. So I had a friend by then who owned a publishing company. And I said, hey, I wrote these books a long time ago. Would you publish them? And she said, well, let me see. And she read it and she goes, yeah, I totally could publish this, but you need to update it because like when I wrote it, Alex Rodriguez, I don't know if you're a baseball fan, Alex
Yeah.
Rodriguez was on the Mariners and the Sonics were here.
Yeah.
And Jill would open up her computer and it said, you've got mail. So
Yeah.
where we get so a lot of updating had to happen. So I spent the winter of COVID updating my first two books sort of in the same way just to, update them. And then I also got what they call a developmental editor, which is somebody who helps you with your story and make your story tighter. And so I worked with her and made the story better. So
From what I know from the amazing authors that work in the legal profession, I did have a guest on my show who's one of the federal judges in Virginia on a couple weeks ago, which was very interesting. He joined me from his office at the courthouse, and I'm just like,
wow, that's cool.
very interesting. But what I find is when people come from a law background, the power of words. You know that every word matters when you're standing up presenting in court or writing up your documents. There's a reason why these words exist, and they're in that order and written this way. all that's information is really important from a legal perspective. How does that discipline of you understanding the value of words translate into you as an author? Do you follow that in your writing, or do you try to walk away from that and be creative in the moment?
Well, words are tools. And so if I am writing a legal brief or I am making an argument in court, I better have some passion behind it. I better believe in what I'm talking about. And I would use the words to convey my passion or my belief in, hopefully, my client, which even if you don't, you have to work it up as though you do, right?
Yeah.
So similarly, words are tools. I would say words are tools for writing a book. It's just like I get this passionate thing I want to teach people about, and I just need to use the words to get it. So I don't think of words as something in and of themselves. I think of them as a tool to communicate a message. And if the passion is strong enough, the words tend to come pretty easily. So it's not a struggle for me to write if I've got something I really want to say.
Okay.
It just comes pouring out. So yeah, I use words, but I'm not one of those people that's words for the sake of words. I'm one of those people words for the sake of I've got a really important thing I want to communicate and let's go.
So does your authorship journey somehow find its way back into your legal duties and what you do? Does that kind of come back into what you do?
Um, Good question. More not necessarily the writing. Well, a little bit the writing. I mean, I teach young lawyers how to write a lot, and
Okay.
it's very different. Here's what's different in legal writing than in fiction or non-legal writing. In legal writing, you've got your audience is usually a judge or commissioner, and they are very busy, and they do not want to read a story that culminates on page 7. Like you got to
Yeah.
get it right out there on page 1. This is what I want. This is the most important. I just did one this morning, like with a young lawyer. It was like she was telling the story, they got married, this happened, this, and then page 5, it's like, and the mother, had a mental health breakdown and ended up, wandering around the streets of, I can't remember, someplace in Florida, and they couldn't find her. And I'm like, well, that's where you start. Because if you want a judge to read your thing and say, why are we here? A judge just needs to see it right out of the chute. Like, give me
Yeah.
the, and then you can backfill it. But when you write a story, you can't say, if your story is
No.
about, and then they found the criminal, in, Mexico, you don't start off your story by saying, the criminal was found in Mexico and here's how it all happened. You don't do that. So it's a
Right.
completely opposite way of arranging your thoughts. So I think fiction writing, I think, can make it harder to do legal writing because in fiction writing, you're like putting together all the pieces for this big grand finale over here. In legal writing, it's the
Yeah.
exact opposite.
Yeah. I would think that legal writing would be very factual. There again, it wouldn't be a lot of fluff. Where writing a fictional novel, you have the ability to be creative and make things up and make up
Well,
places and time and people. You can kind of
well,
craft a story, right?
well, no, because
Good.
in family law, I'm a family law lawyer, and
Yeah.
you have to tell a story, and it better
Okay.
be passionate, and it better be interesting and compelling. So it's not dry. It's like,
Okay.
this happened, and then the baby was missing, and then this happened, and you want the judge to be like, "Oh my God, this is terrible." They're not gonna, they don't get that emotional, but
Yeah.
you want to bring emotion because I write about families and children, and
Right.
people that get screwed over when someone steals the money and takes off for, buys a yacht and we can't find him, or somebody
Mm.
so you want to build, you don't want it to be dry. You want it to be as compelling as possible. And you want to make it really real so that a judge or someone who's reading it is like, oh my God, I feel sorry for this person, or I need to make this right, or how can I make an equitable decision about this? But if you wrote a legal brief really dry, they'd be like, it'd be boring, I think, for them.
Okay. What?
That said, you don't want to use too many, you don't want to be too flowery because they don't have a lot of time.
Yeah, they want to get right. Okay, I get it. I totally understand that. For a new author that's listening to the show, Amanda, then they're just starting. They don't know what's ahead of them right now, but they know they have a passion to write. If you had a few minutes and they could come to your island and grab a tea with you there on the porch and just talk authorship, what would you do to encourage a young author who's curious about being where you are someday?
Well, I get motivated by something that pisses me off. Like I want to like I don't just write a story. I'm not just that kind of writer. Like I know somebody could just sit down and write a story about, somebody who made a garden and, something, I don't know what. But I write about I want to teach people something or I want to communicate something or I want to like I was pissed off about the insurance companies, right? So
Yeah.
I wrote that story. And then the second book was pissed off about insurance companies valuing babies. So I wrote that story. Then fast forward 15 or 20 years, and I do a lot of work with people in prison. And I met a lot of moms who had been in prison when they were mothers. And I'm like, oh my God, like everybody needs to know about this. So out of that, like pissed offness about like
Yeah.
an injustice,
Yeah.
I want to teach somebody about an injustice. And so then the story comes together. So I think if I were going to say, find something you're really passionate about, even if it's something you want to communicate to people. I think stories are such a good way of communicating. People are more likely to learn something if they read a story about it. And so, like, you could write an article about something, or you could, make a podcast about something that's technical. But if you wanted to really get somebody to believe in something that you believe in, write a story about it, because that brings empathy. Like, people learn by reading your story because they get empathy for your characters. And actually, I was just reading this morning that reading fiction builds empathy in children because you put yourself in somebody else's shoes. And so if you're writing a fiction story, you want to find a way to build empathy for your characters in a way that would communicate something that's important to you.
Yeah, I'm picking up on your empathy. I'm picking up on the story side of what you do in the courtroom, and then also through your writing. Is there anything else different from the court life that you have in the courtroom to authorship? Something you had to learn as a new author when you started writing?
Well, yeah, you can control the narrative.
Right.
So, I mean, you can have it turn out the way you want it to turn out. So you get to put together, like in the book I just wrote on Shackled, which is about, moms in prison and their babies and stuff. You have to show situations where it's not working out. Like, part of writing is that your hero has to go through a journey and things have to get worse and worse and worse and worse before they can get better. And in the legal situation, you don't have really any control. Like in family law, if you're suing your neighbor because a tree fell over in your yard and landed on your garage and you had to pay $50,000 to get your garage fixed, 3 years later, you're in court or you're in a lawsuit and you're talking about the tree that hit your garage, but the garage is probably fixed and, it's all over with whatever, a car accident, whatever. Family law, it happens in real time. So you are litigating something as it is happening. So in family law, it's a little bit like book writing in a funny way, because you're like it's going on in real time. Like your client is doing something and you're giving them advice that informs the litigation that's ongoing right in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a little bit closer to fiction writing, because you're kind of like, you can hopefully have some control over the facts of your case as it is coming out, but then you can't completely control your people because everybody has their own, crazy motives for what they're doing. But
all right. When you're writing, are you writing primarily from your single point of view, sharing a story, and then hoping people find you as readers? Or do you have a reader in mind that you're writing to and trying to communicate to as an author?
I am writing for ordinary people that don't really have a good understanding of the legal system.
Okay.
So I'm writing for, somebody who's sitting on their couch in Oklahoma or someplace who isn't a lawyer and doesn't have any real experience in the legal system and has never thought about some of the issues that are really important to me that I think should be important to all of us. So,
Okay.
For example, in the book about the moms in prison, like some people don't think about this, but if you put a mother in prison and take her away from her children, if you put a dad in prison, the kids usually stay with their mom, and so they lose their dad, but they keep their primary attachment figure. But if you put a mom in prison, the kids don't usually stay with their dad, so the child usually ends up somewhere in the system. And
Right.
guess where those kids end up someday? They end up getting into trouble and
Yeah.
causing, community safety issues in our society. And so I don't think very many people think very much about the fact that if you put a mom in prison, it's a community safety issue because their child is going to, many times, it's going to make some poor decisions and end up, causing community safety issues out there. So those are the types of issues that I really like to talk about in writing because nobody really thinks about it. So, but nobody really wants to read a book about that. So I have to tell a story about, this exciting lawyer and she's solving the mystery and trying to find the missing baby. But peppered into the whole thing is like, oh my gosh, I didn't know this much about the women in prison.
I'm curious how, Amanda, you have time to write. How do you, like, can you give us like an overview? Like, what does a week look like for you? Can you give us some context of where do you have time in your schedule with all the things going on to be dedicated to writing? What does that look like for you?
Well, I have a busy litigation practice, so I do law all day, every day. And then mostly I write on the weekends.
Okay.
Like I'll just, block out time on the weekends and, but it takes a while to kind of get your head into it. Like it'll take a while. Like a lot of times I'll sit down to write and I usually read the chapter or two that I just wrote to get, to kind of reboot.
Yeah.
And sometimes I hardly even remember it. It's the craziest thing. I'm like, oh,
Who wrote this?
so
Yeah.
you kind of get into this zone, I feel like. And then your heart is kind of, and the characters, like I'm not one of those people that plans everything out perfectly at the beginning. So sometimes the characters take a left turn when I thought they were going to take a right turn. And then you got to go back and fix things because,
Yeah.
and I guess if I'm going to give an advice to a new writer, it's let your characters like tell you who they are. Like don't try to constrict them so much because sometimes when you're writing a character, that character has his own personality and will start doing fun things that you weren't expecting. And if you kind of try to pull them back and try to make them do what you want, you're going to miss some of the joy of writing because the joy, it's almost like watching a movie. Like you get these people there and then they start doing things. And so, that's part of the, people say, isn't it, like you get tired or something, but it's by the end of that, it's kind of energizing. And so if I work all week and then I sit down and write on the weekends and something crazy happens in the story that I wasn't expecting, it's kind of like watching a good movie and like, wow, I can't wait to go back tomorrow and see what happens.
I like when a character helps lead the story for an author. I think that's a nice connection between you and the people that you're creating and the stories you're creating. I like that.
And sometimes a character you didn't think about. Like when I first wrote The Complication, I had these sort of background characters and all of a sudden they step up and now in my second and third book, they're like main characters. And the same thing's happening now. I've got this one who's sort of a background character and I'm like, wait a minute, like she's going to like solve the problem or like whatever it is. So it's really fun to let them tell us who they are instead of us, coming up with, and I know some people do this, these big massive outlines and, if you write a complicated story, but I do it backwards, honestly. Like I'll write and then something will happen that I wasn't expecting. And then you got to go back and kind of put the, like some guy who, in the Unshackled, some guy who was a really bad guy turned out to be a good guy in the end. And I'm like, well, I can't have him be that bad all the time. So you have to put little clues in at the beginning that he really has a little bit of a heart that you couldn't see. But it's kind of a process of writing along and then thinking, oh, shoot.
Yeah.
I just went a different direction. And then you have to go back and like reboot the whole thing. So it's fun.
At what point do you know where the finish line is for one of your books?
Well, when it gets to the point where, if you follow sort of the hero's journey thing where you go through the bad thing happens and then it gets a little better and the bad things happens, look a little better. Then you start to, when all the pieces start to come together, then it's like, okay, I see where we're going here. But sometimes like when I was writing Unshackled, I didn't know how it was, I knew kind of how it was going to end, but it hit me about halfway through. It's like, oh, this is the big surprise that I didn't even know was going to be the big surprise. And so, then it's that whole rewriting thing at the beginning. I'm sure there's a more efficient way to write a book, and I haven't figured it out yet, but it's my only way I know how to do it.
So is it mandatory reading for all of your attorneys to read your books as part of their job? It might be interesting. You could sell more books, right?
Like 3, 6 or something. But I don't even write books to sell books, honestly. Like I was thinking about that with Unshackled. Like right now, there's a couple professors at Seattle University who are using it as a textbook in a class.
Wow.
And they're also doing a research project around it. Like they're writing right now in an institutional institutional review board for research on mothers in prison.
Really?
So they're using this book, and now they're doing these, like they go to conferences and stuff, and they're talking about, this is really interesting. They're talking about, because they're like regular old professors, right? And they teach criminal justice law, and they're like, we never thought of using a fiction book to teach our students about issues in the criminal legal system. But
Yeah.
now that we've seen our students, they're so impassioned and they get so involved in this story and they're learning the same stuff that we've been trying to teach them, but all of a sudden they care about it because it's real to them. And so now they're doing this, they're going to do a research project about this, and we're going to do a summit of moms in prison. So I guess what I'm saying is, to me, that book is more than just read it for fun. It's like it's an opportunity for learning. And if we can get students to read it and, college students to read it and, people who, policymakers, like some of the people in our state legislature are reading it and calling me up and like, well, I think we need to change some of the laws around some of this stuff.
Wow.
Yes. So my books are really written for changing people's hearts and policies and educating more than just, oh, I read a cool book last week.
Had you known that could be a result when you started to write, would you have written any differently at all?
No, because that was always my intention. Like my
Okay,
intention
good.
in writing these books is social justice education, really. I mean, and anybody could read it and think it's a fun book. It's not boring like,
Yeah.
you're reading something academic or something. But the whole purpose of it is, I think people can learn things about our system that impacts all of us in a way that, like this person sitting on their couch in Omaha isn't probably going to pick up a book about women in prison, right? Like they're not going to, but they would pick up a book about a lawyer who's solving a mystery. And then while they're reading it, it's like, because I have so many people who are like, I had no idea. Like I learned so much about, what's going on with, I didn't know this was happening. And people don't. And somebody has to be a voice. For me, I feel like I want to be the voice for all these moms in prison and more importantly for their children.
Yeah.
Because their children are all sort of in the situation where their lives are really much more difficult than we could ever imagine. And it's just sort of a forgotten population. And so if I can put that in a book that's sort of a compelling, fun legal thriller with the message of, you guys, this is not right.
Right.
And then they get moved
Yeah.
to want to make a difference.
That's amazing that they're using your book in that way, though. I would think that a lot of the books that the students would be reading would be very technical and very factual. And back to what we talked about at the beginning, right? There's a story behind it. Mm-hmm. And the fact that there's a story through your book, I think the connection that they're getting from reading your book in class, I think that's outstanding. I think that's great.
Yeah, well, that's my dream. It's like, oh my gosh, they got it. Like, I have a vision that this book would be used for, policymakers and professors and, and average people too, but like people that can make a difference when they read a book that makes it more real. Like someone can tell a legislator about moms in prison and how hard life is for them or their kids, or they could read a book where you have an empathy. That back to the thing about building empathy by fiction. You're building empathy among people that could make a difference for something that could change a policy or could change somebody's life.
Well,
And oh my gosh, I had moms in prison review this as part of the process. I sent it into the prison because I have a lot of
Really?
friends. Yeah, like I have a lot of girlfriends who were in prison and they helped me. Well, they're now out because I do a lot of work with people that are in prison, which is a whole nother story. But I'm on a board that works with women in prison for higher education. And so I had one of the staff members take the manuscript in, and I got feedback from women that are actually in prison that was like, this is, and I got this one review from one woman in prison that's in the front of the book that's just, she says, Camille Delaney is the lawyer that every mom in prison wishes that she had. So they are really, the women in prison are very much behind this book, and all the women that are out of prison that used to be in prison are very devoted to the sisters, they call them, that they left behind in prison. And so they're working really hard to lift up their stories. So it's a little bit of a big group effort between me as the writer and all these moms in prison who are relying on me to tell their story to the regular people and to the policymakers. And so it's this it's a little bit of a love fest, I guess.
there's a lot of different reasons to write a book. It could just be fun to write a book and just share a story. But I love when stories have a message and can help people and can change minds and change laws and change perspectives and opinions. I think this is amazing that you can use that as a platform still share a great story, but there's that underlying current that can make a change. That's amazing.
Well, and it better be a good story because nobody's going to read it if the story isn't. If the
Right.
story all falls apart. So it's
Right.
just like you're walking this line of wanting to get all this information in, and then but you don't want to overflow it with too much. So I'll write it, and I'm like, is this too much like talking at you kind of stuff? And then the editor's like, yeah, pull this out and change that a little bit. But like there's statistics in there because like Camille will go into court, she'll make an argument in court about this mom in prison, and then her argument will be based on statistics and things. And so you're reading her argument in court, which is to get a baby back, but in the course of her argument, she's educating the reader as she's educating the judge. And so it's this whole layered way of writing.
It's amazing. So the name of my show is Living the Next Chapter. So I have to ask, of all my guests, I love asking this question. You have the books out in the world. Are you continuing to live your next chapter as a writer? Can we expect more from you down the road in the future?
Well, I'm kind of working on a TV series.
Oh, wait. Everyone in the back. Did you hear that? Shh. Okay. Yeah. We'll keep it. We'll in hushed tones. We'll just quickly touch on this. I'm excited about that. Wow.
Right. So I got a screenwriting coach. I met this guy who's a producer, and he actually, I was really interested in my story, and I'm like, why are you so interested in this? And he's like, because I was in prison. And I'm like, okay.
Wow.
So anyway, I'm learning about the difference between, and don't ask me to teach anything about this because I am a learning student, but the difference between writing for a TV show and writing a book is very different. It's all these, you got to learn all these. You got the beats, don't even get me started. You got so many beats per episode and and how many pages for every scene. And like so I was going to start another book, but then I thought if I'm really going to work on this, which is such a long shot. I mean, come on, whoever gets a TV show produced, but I figure somebody does, so it might as well be me.
Might as well.
And it's the same thing. Like I want to tell this story, and I think it's a valuable story, and I have a really good character who can, like I've got a million other stories in my head. So if I could figure out how to do this, it would be cool. But anyway, I figured trying to write a new book and try to do this TV show thing, because you have to change your story a lot. Like every time someone says, "Oh, the movie wasn't as good as the book," I'm telling you why.
Yeah.
Like you have to like change the tone, and you got to have more bad things happen and more tension and more, working with a TV writing coach is a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
Like you just have to. So my next chapter is I'm learning how to write. I don't want to be a TV writer necessarily, but I want to figure out how to get this launched in a way that's more accessible.
And it could help more people then.
Exactly.
Right. And that's a good thing. We want to get more and more people to fall in love with the story and then make more change. And yeah, I think that's amazing. When I talking to you about where you are right now in your cabin and stuff, and that setting lends itself to a great story, by the way. You could write just about where you are and make up a whole story.
Well, Camille Delaney spends
right?
a lot of time in the San Juan Islands.
There you go. So there you go. It's right there in the book.
Well, people are like, is this autobiography? I'm like, well, I can only write about what I know about because I don't have the time to do a bunch of research. So you're going to see a lot of autobiography in here. Like, she's a sailor and she spends time in the San Juan Islands and she lives in Seattle and she works in the front office and the whole thing. But I think if I had it to do over, I might not have made it so not autobiographical, but like so similar. But when I first started it, I'm like, I just have to tell the story. And this is the quickest way I can do it is to talk about things I know about. So,
yeah. Wow. Excellent. Amanda, thank you again for making time for us and taking time out of your day to do this. I really do appreciate it. For the readers and the authors that are listening and they want to follow your journey, maybe there's something TV-wise in the future, we don't know. But they want to follow your journey and be there and be part of your community as readers. Where can we send them where they can be in touch with you and continue to watch your journey?
Well, I have like a Facebook page and I have hang on, somebody told me that I should be ready to tell you this. I have like a Facebook page and I have a TikTok now. It's Amanda DuBois Author. I think that's what it is. Instagram and all that. And I do these, I do this interview series. I have a YouTube channel that does this interview series where I interview moms that have been in prison.
Oh, wow.
And I think that's also Amanda DuBois Author.
Okay.
But
Good.
anyway, I do lots of different stuff. And I put the I have somebody who helps me with TikTok, so I don't know this stuff very good. I also TikTok who takes the interviews that I did with the women who've been in prison and they make them into these little short things. So I think it's Amanda DuBois author and TikTok and Instagram and
Okay.
YouTube. And then I have a webpage that's amandadubois.com. And on that, you can sign up for a newsletter, and the newsletter shoots out these interviews that I do, which are super interesting and really,
Good.
really interesting women doing really interesting work after prison.
Well, speaking of an interesting woman doing interesting work, thank you, Amanda, for being on the show. Thank you for how you show up and how you serve your community and raise the voice of people that don't have a voice through your writing. I just think it's outstanding that you're able to leverage this, share great stories, and help people at the same time. It's a great combination.
Well, hopefully it'll just keep on happening. So I appreciate you for inviting me. This has been really fun.
Excellent.
And I'm going to take you up on the invitation to move to Canada.
There you
It's an year.
We'll bring you in. I'll sneak you in. No problem. I love it.
Fantastic.
Excellent.
Okay. All right.
Everyone, all
Okay.
information for Amanda's in the show notes, everyone, as you're listening. When you buy Amanda's books, please leave a great review. Let people know why you love this book. Tell them, right? Don't just say great author, great book. That's nice. But tell them exactly why you love this book. So more people will find it. It'll be shown to more people. More people will be helped. And Amanda will sell more books because, and even though she says it's not about selling the books, it's about
can I say
getting
one
the,
thing?
right. Yeah.
Let me say one thing. All my book proceeds go to social justice.
Well, there you go.
I don't
Right.
make any money on this little project of
See?
mine. So we donate all the proceeds. So I don't really care about selling books, but I really care about people reading them. And so if anybody can leave an Amazon review, that would be awesome.
Beautiful. And that money then will also help more people. So all around, everyone wins when we buy Amanda's books. So please do that. Leave a great review. Amanda, thank you so much for being here.
All right. Thank you. It's been fun.
Hey, thank you so much again for pressing play. As you've heard, great guests on the show. And one thing you didn't hear in this conversation is what? What did you not hear? Think about it for a second. That's right. Not a single solitary commercial for a mattress or a supplement or a whatever you call it. No. Why? Because we don't want to break up the conversation with commercials. So the fact that you're still here means that you are a fan of the show, I'm assuming. So if you want to help to keep the podcast going and to make me feel really happy, all I really care about is coffee, okay? I just got to be honest. I love coffee. I'm drinking one right now. It's starting to get cold. I need to warm it up. Helping us with our Buy Me a Coffee link over at livingthenextchapter.com and also in the show notes helps kind of keep the lights on around here. Remember, I'm doing this for free. I'm paying for everything. So I would love to have a little coffee donation, even $5 kind of fills up my cup. And I would love to enjoy a coffee from you. So if you're interested, again, thank you for listening. But you can use our Buy Me a Coffee link and fill up the cup. Thanks for being here.